Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA'S Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hear what the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture thinks of some of the top issues facing cattle producers. Plus, I'll look back at some of the exciting wins for the beef industry in 2018.
And now, NCBA'S Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of NCBA'S Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Thanks for joining us. And with us today, we are honored to have the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue.
Good
Secretary,
hello, sir.
Thank you for joining us. I love your tie, I have to tell you.
Well,
that's fantastic.
You may have seen it before.
Indeed, indeed. When we were together last in Washington, D.C., we talked about the Farm Bill. You got that bill passed. Tell us about the implementation steps as we move into 2019.
Well, obviously, we were a small part of the Farm Bill. Obviously, Congress passes that bill, but I was really proud of our people. They did over 2,000 technical assistances to members of Congress, both the House and the Senate, and their ag committees and Congress as a whole, in helping them to determine what would be the impact. Now, since the bill is passed, and I'm delighted that it passed in 1 year, our folks have been at work. Even during the shutdown, our implementation people have been at work there. So we hope to have all the rules and all the regulations out very, very soon, so our growers and producers and ranchers can understand what they need to do.
You bet. The beef industry is pleased to have just gotten through a year of record-breaking exports, but I have to tell you, exports are top of mind for cattlemen. We talk a lot about Japan, the need to incorporate agriculture in these European discussions. Of course, China is on top of mind for everybody. Give us an idea of what we should expect from the administration in the year ahead relative to solving some of these export issues. Well,
when I talk to the president, I tell him the top 3 issues for farmers are trade, trade, and trade. And that certainly applies to the cattle industry as well. Our producers are so effective and so efficient, we can't consume everything we can grow. Obviously, China and Japan. Japan is a big lift there, and good news is Ambassador Lighthizer on it. He understands the need there to get in before these TPP from other countries start setting in there. And we have high goals there. I'll tell the group more today about the China, and we're looking forward to good things there as well.
That's fantastic. And when we were together last, we also talked about fake meat. I know we are all pleased to see your department get involved in that discussion, and we feel like we're headed in the right direction. Give us an update on where we stand with both regulatory issues relative to fake meat.
Well, I really appreciate this is when NCBA was really helpful in helping the administration understand the division. FDA does have certain scientific skills and things and a part in this, but we believe if USDA is the agency charged with keeping our meat safe, we want to be there right when that meat is prepared and labeled and make sure that our customers and our consumers know what they're getting and it's labeled appropriately from our animal-grown protein to the lab-grown protein.
Fantastic. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for your support of our entire industry. We appreciate it and certainly consider you a friend of our industry.
Thank you, Kevin. I feel likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.
And when we return, we'll highlight some of the key wins for the beef industry in 2018. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When it comes to the beef business, there's no room for gray area. The decisions being made in Washington affect the future of the beef industry, the livelihood of your fellow farmers and ranchers. Your National Cattlemen's Beef Association knows there's what benefits cattlemen and there's what doesn't. To us, it's as clear as black and white. Visit joinncba.org to learn more.
Looking for an advantage in your cattle business? Then join the wave of commercial cattlemen who are seeing the value of Hereford genetics.
Breed back is just absolutely phenomenal. I'd say probably 80% of our keeping heifers were baldy this year, and just can't say enough good things about them.
Since we started using Hereford bulls again, I've for sure probably seen 15 to 20 pounds on our weaning weight.
I think our Hereford baldy heifers, they'll be a little more fertile. a little more longevity.
Hereford bulls and females maximize the value of your herd, improving fertility, feed efficiency, docility, and more.
Hereford really has a big impact over other breeds when it comes to that heterosis and hybrid vigor. It's really humbling to visit with these cow-calf producers and see these 100-year commercial ranches coming back to Hereford. They've seen the differences, they've seen the genetic progress, they've seen the difference in the cattle.
The science shows Hereford genetics pay. Don't miss out on the Hereford advantage. Discover the bald-faced truth about Hereford genetics at the website herefordtruth.org.
Welcome back. 2018 was an exciting year for the beef industry, and the attendees at the Cattle Industry Convention in New Orleans had a chance to review some of the big wins we saw as cattle producers last year. Here's a look back at some of the key moments that made an impact.
My favorite part of serving this year as Beef Board Chair has been the people. We have amazing people involved in caring about getting beef to the plate at all phases of it. It really is a matter of us seeing how valuable each one of us is to this picture.
My favorite part about being an ACW president this last year is getting to travel to each of the states and see the women in action in their local states. We're all working for the same goal, and we're trying to promote healthy, safe beef and show that we are conscious with what we're doing with our land and how we take care of it.
It's an easy answer to what I've enjoyed most as NCBA president. That's going out across the country and getting to interact and visit with cattle producers. No matter where you go across the country, whether it's north, south, east coast, west coast, when you go to a state affiliate or go to a cattlemen's meeting, you're made to feel like family. And that's true. And so that's been my biggest gratification and fulfillment is being able to interact with producers across the country and them making me feel like I'm part of the family.
I'm really excited about the new program that we've kicked off this year, which is WIRED, Women in Ranching Education and Development. It is a program that is to help educate women about telling their beef story and educating themselves on ranching techniques or issues, and then taking it to the consumers and the students. And we're doing that through a 1 or 2 day seminar.
The Beef Checkoff program is always innovative, always looking for new ideas. This year, we're going to be introducing Chuck Nose Beef. Right now, just in its infancy stages, but you can find Chuck Nose Beef on Google and interact with him. He knows all things beef, everything on Beef It's What's for Dinner, Chuck knows.
Our export market's at that 20% of value for every steer and heifer that's fed in this country. It comes down to about $320 to close to $400 depending upon the price of cattle. For every steer and heifer, about $350 or so is attributed to our export markets. And so take away that $350 out of your pocket for every steer and heifer you sell, and that amounts to a big deal. And so that's why it's important to keep those numbers in mind going forward.
In 2018, the Beef Checkoff dollars helped us, through U.S. Meat Export Federation, build $8 billion worth of product into foreign markets. Japan, South Korea, Mexico, Canada, all of these countries, $8 billion in 2018. Your checkoff dollar, our checkoff dollar helped to do that.
We had, on the trade front, we had the USMCA agreement signed by the President, and now we're waiting for ratification by Congress, our Congress, as well as Mexico and Canada's government bodies. And so that is an important deal with two of our biggest trading partners. The second thing is the Farm Bill, I would say, was a great win. It wasn't a perfect bill for us, but we had hugely important things like foot and mouth disease vaccine bank permanently authorized and some funding for it. So those two issues are extremely important, and I think they're huge wins for producers across the country. So I was invited by the President in the White House to attend the Farm Bill signing before Christmas. Of course, that's obviously exciting to be asked by the President and shake his hand and have him call you out by name. But the reason that happened is because of the hard work and the relationships our DC NCBA staff has with this administration back in Washington, DC. And I think it's a reflection upon the support of our NCBA members that have shown this administration, and the recognition by the President that agriculture and the cattle industry and ranchers are important to what he believes in, and that's why we got that ask.
Our beef checkoff program is focused on driving consumer demand for beef. That's our drive. Everything we do, every dollar we spend, is to drive consumer demand for beef. As farmers and ranchers, we can be proud of the beef checkoff program because we're making a difference. Our voice through those dollars is impacting people buying beef at the counter, people understanding the sustainable use of cattle in the environment. We're making a difference.
I would just like to let producers know my reflection of all the years in leadership at the NCBA and traveling across the country is we have a strong industry. I'm proud of the reputation that cattlemen have across the country in politics and other places, to where we're small in numbers, but we carry a big stick, bigger than we probably, most other industries would be envious of the clout we have for our small numbers, and I'm very proud of that. We still are the guys wearing the white hat wherever we go, and we should always take advantage of that.
Some of those highlights from 2018 were due to the efforts of the NCBA staff in Washington, D.C. Russell Nemitz caught up with Colin Woodall, NCBA's Senior Vice President of Government Affairs, to get his thoughts on what to expect for the year ahead.
Well, the number one priority of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is representing their members both in the country and in our nation's capital on key legislative policy issues. And with us on the segment today is Colin Woodall. Of course, Colin heads up the NCBA's Washington, D.C. office. And Colin, here at the Cattle Industry's annual convention, we've just received the policy priorities for 2019. Let's walk through some of them and the hard work and the boots on the hill that you folks at NCBA will be doing from this point forward for the remainder of the year.
Well, the great part about our process is that this is truly a grassroots focused and a grassroots led organization. So what we had was action by our executive committee to set these policy priorities that we are now going to implement in Washington, D.C. And leading that list is trade. Trade is one area where we're very optimistic in what we are seeing out of President Trump and his administration. We do believe they're going to make a lot of progress on things such as China, a bilateral trade agreement with Japan, and possibly some additional work with the EU and the United Kingdom. And all of those would be a great benefit to us and the bottom line of every cattle producer across the country.
Of course, another one that we've been talking about quite a bit here of late are electronic logging devices and hours of service, and trying to get some federal regulations sorted out so they're friendly to the U.S. livestock industry and those people that haul our livestock and commodities to and from market.
That's right. Regulatory rollback is a big part of our 2019 priorities, and ELDs is a top one for us because we have a problem trying to get cattle from their origin to their delivery and do so in a way that they don't have to be unloaded and reloaded again. That means we need more hours of service for drivers to be able to drive and do so legally. It is truly an animal welfare issue. We need those trucks going down the road to keep those cattle safe and happy. And we do believe we're going to have an opportunity to expand the hours of service. We have a petition at DOT that would take that from 11 to 15 hours. While it's not everything that we need, it's definitely a step in the right direction.
You know, talking about other regulatory issues, it seems that we are making a little bit of headway in one of those ones we've talked for years about, the waters of the U.S. rule. What's the latest from Washington, D.C., especially with all the new members of Congress now?
So we have a new proposed regulation that does two great things. It protects water quality, which we're all about because we need to make sure we have clean water to have the best beef that we can produce. But more importantly, it protects private property rights. That's not something that the 2015 Obama rule did. So we are very thankful to the President and also to the EPA and all the work they are doing to both keep water clean and also protect our rights as landowners.
You know, something we don't think a whole lot about with all these other big issues impacting the U.S. beef cattle industry as they do, but NCBA also works with a lot of others in making sure U.S. agriculture, our producers, are well represented when those new dietary guidelines come out.
That's right. We are working very closely with USDA. We have submitted a long list of potential appointees to the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee. This is the committee made up of scientists that's going to look at the current guidelines. They'll also look at the current science to make sure that those guidelines are reflective of all the nutritional data that we have today. But as we see every 5 years when the dietary guidelines come up, this is always an opportunity for the activist groups to come out and try to take us off the center of the plate. So we're really going to have to rely upon the great work that the checkoff has done on dietary research to be able to utilize that information, but more importantly, make sure that we prevent this from becoming a process that is focused more on agendas than it is on science, and that's our goal, to make sure we have a balanced process.
Colin, I want to wrap things up talking about another big issue here of late, alternative proteins, fake meat, however you want to describe these, and the work that's being done from NCBA and others to make sure these are properly labeled moving forward at the best interest of U.S. beef cattle producers.
This is a hot topic and a fun topic, and a topic that was actually talked about a year ago when we set policy in regards to NCBA's action and engagement on this issue. And over the course of the year, we were successful in making sure that these products are going to be regulated by FDA on the overall safety of the technology, but more importantly for us, making sure that USDA's Food Inspection and Safety Service is engaged on the day-to-day inspection of the product and also be the group that approves all the labels. Because if FDA was in charge of label approval, they very well may approve that use of clean meat on the packaging, and we don't want that, and USDA will not allow that.
Well, Colin, we always appreciate you joining us on Cattlemen to Cattlemen and providing us a very thorough update on what you folks are working on back in our nation's capital.
Thank you, Russell. Always good to be with you.
All right, again, Colin Woodall, the Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the National Cattlemen's Beef Association in their Washington, D.C. office. Kevin, with that, we'll go ahead and send it back to you.
Thanks, Russell. Coming up, we'll take you to Nebraska to see what life is like back home for 2018 Beef Board Chair Joan Ruskamp. Don't go away. We'll have more right after this.
Simmons Brothers Limousine in Amherst, South Dakota is a fourth-generation family operation that treats their cattle and their customers right.
Service is one of our #1 criteria. We offer a first-year unconditional guarantee on the bulls.
Simmons Brothers breeds top-quality limousine bulls and females, focusing on the traits and the production that will put money in their customers' pockets.
They were commercial cattlemen before they came into the limousine business. They're cattle feeders. They really know the kind of genetics that it takes to be successful.
We're trying to bring a bull that our customer would be able to put on any set of cows, and those calves could earn a premium when he brings them to the sale barn.
You can depend on limousine genetics from Simmons Brothers. Don't miss their 39th annual production sale Thursday, February 21st. Call today to get a sale catalog and to find out more.
Say goodbye to your toughest pasture and rangeland weeds for good. Because one product offers season-long control, handles the widest spectrum of broadleaf weeds, and clears the way for increased forage with greater grazing flexibility. So you get more beef per acre at a cost that can't be beat. It's Graze On Next HL herbicide, and if it's in your pastures, plain and simple, weeds won't be.
Earlier, we heard about some of the successes for the beef industry in promoting beef to consumers worldwide with the support of beef checkoff dollars. The National Beef Checkoff Program is led by cattle producers from all across the country, volunteer leaders who are appointed to represent their state and serve on the Cattlemen's Beef Board. Brian Baxter went to Nebraska to learn more about 2018 Beef Board Chair Joan Ruskamp.
Just outside Dodge, Nebraska, Steve and Joan Ruskamp operate J&S Feedlot. The J stands for Joan, the S for Steve. It's an operation they started and built together.
I met Steve in 1980, and we were married in September of 1981. He grew up on a farm about 11 miles from here and had a small feed yard with his dad and brothers. I don't know if it's in my DNA. I know it's in Steve's because when he was a little boy, he was building little pens with his tractor and in the dirt in the garden. And so for him, it's been a lot longer than but I had great-grandparents and so forth that ranched. So I don't know if it truly can be in your DNA, but I do love cattle.
They started with a 400 head capacity, but today J&S Feedlot has room enough for 4,000 cattle on feed at any one time. That keeps Steve and Joan busy all year round.
Blizzards, Christmas, all of those things that most people take for granted of being, in the house and snuggly and with your family, we're all out with our animals making sure that they're content, that they're fed, and that they're going to make it through whatever weather system. And there are no days off. Every day is a work day to make sure that they're being taken care of. We have this beautiful story in Nebraska, where we can bring those calves off of grass and finish them here where we grow corn really well, and we have the ethanol byproduct, and we're able to produce a corn-fed, tasty, nutritious beef product that is in huge demand all over the world right now.
Joan starts most of her days checking cattle in the pens, and she sees great value in the Beef Quality Assurance, or BQA, program.
It's all about the beef we produce. It doesn't matter if you're raising a calf or finishing a steer, we're producing beef, and it's the quality of beef that drives demand and helps our consumers desire to go back to the store again and again and buy beef. When we all take that seriously, we continue to improve the quality of our product. So at the end of the day, when we realize it's beef we're producing, not a calf, not a finished steer, but it's beef, then that's what BQA is all about.
Over the past 6 years, Joan has spent many days away from the feedlot serving on the Cattlemen's Beef Board. She says when she began, she had a lot to learn about the Beef Checkoff program.
So there was a big learning curve for me to learn really how the state beef councils, the national level of the Cattlemen's Beef Board, the Federation of State Beef Councils, how we all work together as partners, and how the producer, ultimately, me on my farm here, goes through 6 years of serving on the beef board to be chairman. I'm still a producer. I mean, this is who we are in the checkoff program. We're producers, whether at the state level or at the national level. We go back home and we're volunteers there, and we come back home and we work on our farms. We're bringing our passion for the cattle industry and beef production to the checkoff program and hopefully driving beef demand.
And Joan believes that checkoff-funded efforts to drive beef demand and share the real story of beef production are critical to the future of the industry she loves.
Consumer demand for beef is important because it's about price and supply. When the consumer pays more and chooses beef to eat, that lifts all of us to be able to be profitable and sustainable in our businesses, that all segments can continue to operate and plan for the future. I hope that my grandchildren can have beef for supper. I don't know. There are a lot of attacks on cattle in the environment and beef in the diet. The checkoff continues to keep bringing those messages back to, no, this is what cattle are doing in the environment. This is what beef is doing in your diet. And it's positives, to keep driving those positive messages.
From J&S Feedlot in Nebraska, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA'S Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
And joining us now is the new chairman of the Cattlemen's Beef Board, Chuck Coffey. Chuck, thanks for coming to the show today.
Appreciate this opportunity, Kevin.
So let's begin. Just tell folks a little bit about your operation and your background.
I live in southern Oklahoma with a wife, and we have 3 kids in their 20s. My wife and I are both 5th-generation ranchers, not necessarily on that ranch, but our families have been in that business. We run a cow-calf commercial operation and manage about 800 head of cows in southern Oklahoma on native rangeland.
And have a big job ahead as chairman of the Beef Board. Tell folks a little bit about what the primary goals are of the checkoff.
You know, you can sum that up in a couple of simple words. It's to drive beef demand, and we feel we're doing a great job of that. We've got a lot of things that show us that we've had good return on our investment and so forth, and there's a lot of numbers out there I could give you today or at a later date at some time and show you what we do.
I'd like to follow up on that a little bit and tell us just a little bit about why the checkoff is important to beef producers. I mean, what kind of tangible results does it create?
Sure, the dollar that the producers give that come to the checkoff, or the 50 cents anyway that the checkoff gets, a lot of that money goes into like the U.S. Meat Export Federation, which opens up markets overseas and maintains those markets and promotes U.S. beef. And currently, our return is about $320 per head slaughtered. You know, we've got an $8 billion export market today, and that feeds back to my ranch and my family.
Other priorities within the checkoff that you'd highlight?
You know, the other priorities that I've seen, you know, we deal in areas of consumer trust and safety and innovation, and, you know, aside from just export growth, nutrition and health to kind of protect beef's image so people know that, you know, it's one of the healthiest, most nutritious products and best tasting, highest demand product in the world in terms of red meat consumption.
And we're having some pretty favorable demand occurring for beef products, aren't we?
We are. None of us expected to see prices as high as they are. I know everybody's going, well, we'd like them higher, and so would I. But with the amount of beef we've got on the market today and the supply that's there, and also with the competing meats, demand is excellent today in our industry, yes, sir.
So what's one thing you'd like people to know about the checkoff that may be a common misperception or just misunderstanding?
Oh, you know, the thing I want people to know is I work for the producers, and the checkoff, you know, it's a producer-driven entity, and we're charged with, our 100-member board is charged with spending those producers' money in the best way possible to promote and increase beef demand.
It really is producer-led and producer-driven.
Yes, sir, it is. And you don't realize that until you get into, you know, the beef checkoff, and then you understand all of a sudden that, you know, what it does for the value of our industry and keeping demand high and keeping us as profitable as possible.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for all you do. You have an important role as we move ahead in this year with an expanding amount of protein of all species, and so we thank you for your leadership.
Well, thank you very much, and it was a pleasure to be here.
Now remember, you can check out the Beef It's What's for Dinner website for a great interactive experience. You'll find things like recipes, information on beef cuts, and nutritional information at this one-stop shop for all things beef. Still ahead on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we'll highlight the outgoing president of the American National Cattlewomen. Plus, a look at how bale density research at Penn State University is helping producers put up higher quality hay. Stay with us.
What does it mean to be an American cattleman? It means you have what it takes where it counts, on the inside. At Ritchie, we understand that. It's what's on the inside that defines us. We share the same values: ingenuity, commitment, sense of pride. These are the values that built this country. They're the values that built this company. Ritchie, proud to be a partner to the American cattlemen since 1921.
Don't miss the 2019 NCBA Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. It's your opportunity to meet with congressional leaders and federal agency influencers to let them know where cattlemen and women stand on critical issues that impact the cattle business and our way of life. Make plans to be in Washington, D.C. April 2nd to the 4th, the 2019 NCBA Legislative Conference. Together, we can do more. Details at ncba.org.
There were 3 beef industry groups gathered at the 2019 Cattle Industry Convention in New Orleans: NCBA, the Cattlemen's Beef Board, and the American National Cattlewomen, also known as ANCW. ANCW was led this year by a fourth-generation cattlewoman with a passion for the beef industry. Brad Bulla has more on Wyoming's Gwen Geis.
It's a chilly winter morning in northeast Wyoming as Jerry and Gwen Geis load hay and roll it out to feed their cows. This is a couple committed to their family, their cattle, and their land.
My husband is a fourth generation. His grandfather and great-grandfather built the house that my brother-in-law lives in. They started putting the ranch together in the early 20s, and we've just grown from there. Jerry and I have been on the ranch now for 37 years. We've been married 38 years.
Today, the Geis brothers' operation includes about 350 cow-calf pairs, and they grow their own hay and feed. As much as she loves caring for the cows, over the past year, Gwen has spent many days away from home in volunteer service as president of the American National Cattlewomen.
I was born into it. My mother was a cattlewoman president. My grandmother was a cattlewoman president on the local level, and it's just something you did. These women are doing such great things across the country. They're in the schools talking to the children. They're teaching the consumers what's going on. They're cooking beef with each other and sharing that out. We're all working for the same goal, and we're trying to promote healthy, safe beef and show that we are conscious with what we're doing with our land and how we take care of it.
Gwen is proud of the way ANCW works to provide leadership training for women in the beef industry, and she says her experience with the cattlewomen has helped her bring valuable ideas and insights home to her own cattle operation.
By being involved on the local, state, national level, it's improved our operation because I can see some of the benefits of what's happening on the larger scale and where we maybe need to be going, whether it's with vaccinations, whether it's with tagging, minerals, feeding our animals. I see where we need to be headed, and sometimes we get very short-sighted when we don't get outside of ourselves or outside of our local community. I would encourage everybody to be a part of ANCW, NCBA, your local state organizations, because if you don't join, you really can't have a voice. You have to be a member to have a voice.
Gwen's passion for the beef industry is clear, and like so many other cattle producers, the Geis family is eager to make the moves that will allow them to pass their ranch and their life's work on to another generation.
We've spent 37 years here working the land, trying to keep this ranch together and keep it in the family. That heritage means a lot to a lot of us. Fortunately, I think some of our kids and our grandkids have it in them as well, so we're really looking to do that.
In the Powder River Basin of northeast Wyoming, I'm Brad Bulla for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
American National Cattlewomen serves as a voice for women who share a passion for the beef community. To find out more information about the group, go to the website ancw.org. Still ahead, we'll check in with the cowboy poet Baxter Black. Plus, we'll show you how New Holland is supporting cutting-edge research to help producers put up higher quality hay. We'll be right back.
Are you concerned about the impact government policies could have on your cattle business? One way to make your voice heard in Washington is by joining NCBA. When you join, you'll have access to key policy updates and insights from Beltway Beef. It's the best way to hear directly from NCBA's DC team. Beltway Beef provides valuable policy information, and it's free for NCBA members. Stay in touch with Beltway Beef. Join now at ncba.org.
Recently on Cattlemen to Cattlemen, we showed you how New Holland is working with Penn State University to study the impact of bale density and the factors that influence it. Brian Baxter takes us to Pennsylvania for an update on this valuable research and how it could improve the quality and value of your hay and forage.
If you're looking for a hay bale to feed your cattle, this is not the bale you want. This one is spoiled and full of mold. But researchers at Penn State University working with New Holland did this intentionally to measure how bale density affects hay spoilage and the loss of feed value.
We've done study after study after study in field tests that's showing that density does extend the storage life of all the crops that you bale. But what we're not is we're not nutritionists. We don't get into the nutritional side of things. So we partnered with Penn State to take a much closer look at the nutritional side of things. We want to take a peek at that and see how density affects that.
So essentially, the denser the bale we found has that longer bunk life. So the longer we have to feed out that bale. And the lower end on the density ratings that we did, we found that those bales would spoil anywhere between 60 and 65 hours. But on the more dense bales, we actually saw an increase of 20 to 24 hours of bunk life.
There's definitely a relationship between the density of the bale and the temperature that it gets to, and the temperature affects how much protein is available, the availability of nutrients in that bale. As temperature goes up to a certain point, up to about 120 degrees Fahrenheit in that ballpark, we start to see the availability of some of those nutrients start to drop off. So in you get a hot bale, run an analysis on it, and the crude protein comes back at 20%. There may be only 15% of that crude protein is really available because it's been bound up and not available to the animal. So another thing to think about is you're running analysis, quality analysis on these samples. Be sure to ask for available crude protein measurement too, not just the crude protein, because that's sort of a number that doesn't really tell you much when it finally comes to how the animal's going to perform on it.
To conduct the study, the Penn State team used round balers from a variety of manufacturers. They cut and baled hay at various speeds and set bale density at different pressures to see how feed value and storage life were affected. New Holland's Kurt Hoffman walked us through some of the differences in the resulting bales.
So today we're going to take a look at some baleage bales. It's kind of like judging cattle at the local fair. You know, you got some good ones, you got some mediocre ones, and then you got some really good ones. So on this end, we got some of those lower end cattle that just aren't going to quite make the cut today. A little weak here, a little weak there, but as we go down the line, you're going to see that the quality of bale gets a lot better as the density goes up in the bale to give you a better quality silage bale. So one of the things we did is we took a look at bales and bale shape based on the density that the baler was set at. So bale 1 is made at 1,000 psi, bale 2, 1,200, 3, 1,400, so on and so forth. But what I want people to take a look at here is generally, this bale's not a bad looking bale. It's a little barrel shaped in the top, but what I want people to take a look at is look at these voids. We see a lot of voids. If I put my finger on that plastic is soft right in there. So I know that when I cut the plastic off and I open it up, you're gonna find a little bit of mold in this area because we have a pocket of air that happened here. So that's 1,000 psi. As we move up to 1,200, still see some pockets a little bit, but the bales will smooth out gradually as we keep moving up. So here we go to 1,400, 1,600. So if you look at this bale, especially, you see a little bit here, a little here, a little here, a little bit of divoting back there. But now you start to see this bale starting to really get smooth, starting to see a nicer edge. That's really what I'm shooting for as a goal as a silage producer. If I want to pay particular attention to my bales and I want the best quality bales, we're starting to get there. Now we move to 1,800 psi, and this was a nice particular sweet spot, 1,800 to 2,000. But the divots are a lot smaller, my bales are a lot flatter. Notice this bale sits flat, and the ground is basically the same slope here. That bale's starting to get soft on me. That bale's a little soft and not level also. And then if we move up to 2,000 psi, I just want everybody to take a look at how smooth the edges are. Nice and flat across the top. It's a nice bale. You pound on it with your fist, it's good and firm. I would expect that when I take the plastic off of this bale and feed this bale, I'm not going to find hardly any mold, or very, very little if I'm going to see it. So just to give you a visual impact of the goal of what you want to see, this is a good marshmallow, if you will, for a baleage bale.
Of course, the main reason for making hay is to deliver the very best feed value to the animals consuming it. Since that's the purpose, the Penn State researchers say it pays to pay attention to bale density.
The denser the bale, the better, whether you're making wet hay or dry hay. And all of those has to do with hay storage. But it also has to do with some of the nutritional and quality aspects of the forage as well.
Bale density is really important because not only getting more in a bale, so you have to make less bales, but it really affects, if you're going to make silage, how well that silage ferments. Oxygen in the bale slows down the fermentation process, extends it, makes the bale, lets the bale get hotter. The tighter you can make that bale and the tighter you can wrap that bale, squeezes more air out of it so that it'll go anaerobic quicker and start fermenting faster so the temperature doesn't rise. And 120 degrees, 125 is a point when the protein and carbons start to fuse together in the hay and makes the protein unavailable to the animals. So our crude protein level could stay the same in those bales, but the animals, it just blows through the animals. It's not utilizable at all by the animals. So the real available crude protein drops as the temperature goes up like that.
Beyond the value of the nutrition for the animals, increased bale density or more crop in each bale also offers significant cost savings for the hay producer.
So does making a dense bale equal money in my back pocket? You bet, in a lot of different ways. You know, like we've talked, it cuts down on storage losses. That's the big one. But it also increases the quality of feed that you're feeding, so there's less mycotoxins, less molds in that feed if we get proper fermentation. Yeah, it means big money at the end of the year. At the end of 5 years, like we were talking about earlier, you can pay for a 4x5 round baler with the savings in just net wrap and film wrap, let alone the other things, the time and the fuel. We didn't even give any consideration to that kind of stuff. When we know from the Penn State bale density study that our sweet spot is at 8 to 9 mile an hour, that's where we make the densest bale over the competition. So bottom line, run your baler at wherever it will perform the best to make the densest bale, and then the other thing that you can do that helps is turn the density up. You want your density always set to max if you're doing dry crops, if you're doing silage crops.
My advice to cattle producers is just to make as dense a bale as possible, and also to know your baler. In the past, we have thought that possibly the slower you go, the more dense the bale you make, but some of our research has shown that that in fact may not be the case. So it's important to know the type of baler that you have and to know what that sweet spot is to make the most dense bale, because that is the bottom line, is make as dense a bale as possible. That way you have that increased or prolonged bunk life in order to feed your cattle that optimum quality forage.
Additional research results and recommendations from the Penn State work will be shared with producers across the country in the months ahead. At Penn State, I'm Brian Baxter reporting for NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Bale density is just one factor that can improve the feed value of the hay and forage you provide your cattle. Another is the equipment you use. For more information on hay tools from New Holland, visit the website newholland.com. When we return, it's time for a visit with the cowboy poet Baxter Black. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you ready to go deep in the heart of Texas for the 2020 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show? It's the cattle industry's biggest convention back in San Antonio, a place filled with incredible sights, history, food, and fun. And you can't afford to miss the huge NCBA Trade Show.
The trade show is unbelievable. I think it's the biggest one I've ever been to, and it seems like it just gets bigger and better every year.
There's no better place for cattlemen and women to learn, have fun, and connect with fellow producers from across the country.
Cattle Industry Convention is one of those can't miss, right? If you haven't gone or haven't attended, you see so many old friends, and it really is. It's a combination of business and social.
Amazing speakers, unbeatable education, all for cattle producers. So plan now to go deep in the heart of Texas for the 2020 Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show. Visit ncba.org for more.
We know you're up before the dawn because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the land because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that. Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, I have carved another book from my funny bone, guaranteed to tickle your humerus. Sorry. The title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. It's only $19.95 plus shipping. Call 800-654-2550 or online at baxterblack.com. Here's a joke. What did he get on his IQ test? Drool.
Charlie survived and is now a member of that elite group of cowmen who have run the OB Chain Marathon. OB Chain, for you who are poultry producers and might think this refers to manacles worn by over-the-border illegals, or a delicate veterinary instrument used to spay heifers by ovary burglars, it is not. OB stands for obstetrical, obstetrics. Obstetrician refers to pregnancy, labor, and birth. During a calving, well, let me tell you Charlie's story. He and his brother run a cow ranch north of Lewistown, Montana. It was a wet spring, and the brothers were in the midst of calving their heifers outside. The night of the marathon, Charlie drove out to the calving pasture, shining his headlights and spotlighting the group. The heifer in question was obviously engaged in calving. He parked the pickup so the light shone upon her. Taking his rubber bucket with OB chains and handles, he snuck around behind her. She never moved as he reached in and felt a hoof presenting itself in the birth canal. Charlie deftly built a loop in the OB chain, a slip knot, if you will, and placed it around the protruding fetlock. It was at that moment that she came out of her trance. The other end of the chain pulled tight around his wrist, where he had temporarily hung the other slip knot. Jerked to his feet as she sprang up, he had a fleeting thought of being launched into orbit. The ruckus roused the other cows through the coulees, up the bank, across the grass, down the slope, along the manure-covered hay-feeding trail, alternately running, skating, slewing, bouncing, dragging, and plowing in her wake in the moonlight. He accompanied her for 3 hours. Soggy and sweating and gasping for breath, he finally pulled loose and collapsed. Depending on how fast a pregnant heifer can run, dragging 180 pounds of cowboy, including 5 pounds of mud, I'm guessing they covered 12 to 15 miles in that 3 hours. And that might make the record books in the OB Chain Marathon for both time and distance. This is Baxter Black from out there.
Thanks, Baxter, for providing some important safety tips for calving season. Now, if you'd like to stay up to date with what's happening with NCBA's Cattlemen and Cattlemen, you can find us on Facebook. We keep you posted with information about upcoming shows, farms and ranches we're visiting around the country, and we share legacy photos too. So check us out on Facebook. Now don't go away. We'll be back with more Cattlemen and Cattlemen right after this. Stay with us.
Do you know all you need to about working cattle? Did you know there are proven methods that can reduce stress for the animals, for you and your crew? Now there's an easy way for you to learn from the experts who can help sharpen your stockmanship and stewardship skills. In interactive sessions, you'll learn better ways to work cattle more efficiently, skills that can help put more money in your pocket. Find out more and locate an upcoming event near you at the website stockmanshipandstewardship.org.
Join the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. NCBA is the oldest cattle industry organization, working every day to defend your interests in Washington, D.C. And there are big benefits to being a member. You'll get news you can use in the National Cattlemen and policy updates from Beltway Beef, plus big discounts from John Deere, Cabela's, and more great partners. Join now. Call 866-233-3872 or sign up online at ncba.org.
Welcome back to Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Putting together the 2019 Cattle Industry Convention in New Orleans took a monumental effort, and the NCBA trade show alone required months of planning and a few hard days of setup. The Cattlemen to Cattlemen cameras captured that work from start to finish. Let's take a look. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. Thanks so much for spending time with us. We'll see you again next week, right here on RFD TV.